Assassination Nation is a new film directed by Sam Levinson, and it's a comedy, it's a thriller, it's a horror movie, it's a social commentary. I'm not actually sure what this movie is. It's kind of a mixture of different things. I also don't know how to actually feel about this movie, even though I've had about 24 hours to process what I saw last night. Regardless of how I feel or what kind of movie it is, it should make for a pretty interesting review. Let's get into this thing. And let's get into it by realizing that I actually can't remember the names of the actresses and people involved in this movie. I think Odessa Young is the name of the main girl in the movie. I'm pretty sure. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that's her name. Everyone else I have just blanked on. Which is weird because I had their names memorized before the video started, but then the video starts and I just kind of go, shit, who was in this movie? Assassination Nation is a story that takes place in a small town called Salem. The story follows these four girls that are really good friends. They're pretty much your typical millennial chicks. They're on social media a lot, they talk a lot of gossip, they party a lot, you know, the typical shit. They're living their best life. Then one day there's a mysterious hacker who starts hacking people all across Salem, and people's secrets start getting exposed in a pretty public way. A lot of people's secrets start getting exposed, and then these girls somehow become targets because of some of their secrets, and so the whole town goes crazy, and these girls have to find a way to band together to survive before their secrets get them killed. Talk about a movie that I had little to no expectation for. I walked into this movie at an early screening last night, and I had no idea what this movie was. I had heard nothing about it. I knew nothing. Sometimes that's a really good thing when you go into a movie completely blind and you don't even know who's in it or what the point of the movie is, because sometimes you might walk out of the movie surprised by how much you enjoyed it. That's actually kind of how I felt after an hour or so of the movie. I was just sitting there holy shit, this is actually pretty good. Who directed this thing again? The truth is, this movie has a lot more on its mind than just comedy or thriller or horror aspects that they do incorporate into the movie, since it is a genre piece. This movie has a lot more to say. It has a point. It has a message. This movie has some very heavy social commentary that I was not expecting. There's a lot of interesting things that this movie has to say about, again, privacy versus no privacy. Is privacy even still a thing in today's era? The whole social media thing, the whole old generation versus new generation thing, and how there's a disconnect between the old people and the people that are growing up in today's world. Some of the secrets that we keep from our families and keep from our friends. The whole thing. This movie has a lot to say about it, including this one aspect that has to do with parenting. I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm going to let you experience it for yourself. But suffice it to say, there's an interesting question that is raised about parenting and the way that parents decide to raise their kids inside their own house that I honestly hadn't even thought of before. Shit like that is why I was engaged for, I would say, a decent majority of this movie, and that surprised me. I think the four girls in this movie, or because I can't remember their names, Odessa Young and her bitches, I think they all did a really good job acting-wise. They're not gonna blow your socks off in terms of performances or anything, but hey, they got the job done. That's really all I'm asking for them to do, is just do enough that I don't hate you afterwards. Visually speaking, this movie also is really gorgeous to look at. It also has really interesting shot composition and angles. The director here has a very visually distinct style, and I think it really added to the filmmaking on display here. This movie has an interesting way of presenting split screens, and it also does some inverted angles of certain scenes that you wouldn't think would look as beautiful as they do inverted, but they actually do. There's also a shot late in this movie where it's kind of like a long single take outside of a house where you get to see each of the floors. No spoilers for that scene, but it's a very intense scene, and I actually really like the way that he decided to shoot that, because it really added to the tension of the entire thing. Overall, Assassination Nation left me with just enough to keep me interested, just enough to keep me engaged, just enough to make me think about shit that I normally don't even really think about. I just kind of take some of the shit with social media for granted, and this movie makes you actually take a hard look at some of the toxic masculinity as well as some of the other things that go on in social media today. Unfortunately, this movie requires a very heavy dose of suspension of disbelief, and I'm one of those people that if I'm having a good time in a movie, I can suspend my disbelief up to a point. And that point pretty much gets demolished sometime in the second half of this movie, because I would say after the first half and then the second half of the movie starts, the entire movie just kind of tailspins into complete disaster. Okay, maybe not complete disaster, but I'm just saying that to say that the movie definitely fell off the wagon sometime after the second act started. It really just started with the characters and the way that certain situations in the movie were written. Certain characters made decisions that didn't really make a lot of sense. Characters had really weird motivations and reactions to certain situations that didn't really make a lot of sense. And the movie got so crazy and over-the-top insane that it started to really resemble a Purge movie. And not the good parts of the Purge movies, if there are any good parts. I'm talking about the bad parts of the Purge movies that people don't like. The over-the-top silliness, the ridiculousness. I mean, this movie just took plot holes and ran with it, and then they just created like a Grand Canyon of plot holes that you can pick and choose little moments from. I don't even like to use the phrase or terminology plot holes when I'm talking about a movie, but the fact remains that the longer this movie went on, the more questions I had, and unfortunately the movie wasn't really all that interested in answering my questions. I'm just gonna say that. The only way that the crazy, ridiculous stuff in the second half of the movie makes sense to me is if I separate it from the other movie that they told in the first half, which was kind of more of a self-contained, grounded story. If I separate it and I pretend that the stuff that happened in the second half belongs to some kind of fantasy world that doesn't actually exist, then I think I might enjoy it more. Because of the jarring tonal shift and the weird character decisions and situations, the plot holes and the over-the-top ridiculousness of it, it took me out of the movie, and I just had to lower this movie based on that. Assassination Nation was actually a pretty decent watch at the movies. I'm gonna put it in the golden age for Man of Steel. Just above average for this movie. I did overall enjoy it, and I do think it would be an interesting watch for people, especially young people that are growing up in this day and age. I think this movie has a lot of interesting things to say, specifically about you. Since this is a weird mishmash of genres, tell me what your favorite genre is in the comment section down below. Subscribe to the Superfan Show, and as always, if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace!